And then we find the last declaration of Christ on the cross. Luke 23, verse 46 says, "And when Jesus had cried out with a loud voice, he said, 'Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.' And having said this, he breathed his last." You know, it's interesting. Jesus felt forsaken by his Father. He had said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" But notice that when he dies, he does not die without hope. Because he says to the same Father that he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He says to the same individual, to the same Father, he says, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." What did Jesus mean when he said, "I commend my spirit"? You know, we usually think of the spirit just as being the breath. But you know, the spirit is the breath along with the identity of the person. It is the breath along with their personal identity. In other words, with their character. See, when we die, God keeps a record of our character to give us when we resurrect. So Jesus was saying to his Father, "Father, preserve my spirit, my character in your record, because you've promised that if I was successful, you were going to resurrect me." The servant of the Lord in the book Maranatha, page 301, has this remarkable statement. The little old lady understood it. She says, "Our personal identity is preserved in the resurrection, though not the same particles of matter or material substance as went into the grave. The wondrous works of God are a mystery to man." And now listen carefully. The spirit, the character of man, is returned to God, there to be preserved. What is it that's preserved? Only your breath? No. What's preserved is your personal identity, your character, who you were during your life. And then she continues saying, in the resurrection, every man will have his own character. Jesus was saying, "Father, you've promised that if I was successful, you were going to give me my spirit back. Into your hands I commend my spirit." Jesus felt forsaken by his Father, but he knew that he was not forsaken. You say, well, how can Jesus feel forsaken and at the same time utter these words of hope as he's dying? Ellen White explains it in a beautiful way in the Bible Echo, September 15, 1892. She says, "But when, in his expiring agonies, despair pressed upon the soul of the Redeemer, he relied upon the evidences that had hitherto, that is up to this point, had been given him of his Father's acceptance. And as he yielded up his precious life by faith alone, he rested in him whom it had been his joy to obey." He knew his Father from previous experience. She continues saying, "Though all was enshrouded with gloom, yet amid the awful darkness, which was felt even by sympathizing nature, the Redeemer drained the mysterious cup to the dregs. Though he realizes but dimly that he shall triumph." Notice, he recognized dimly that he would triumph. He cries with a loud voice, "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." He is acquainted with the character of his Father. He understands his justice, his mercy, and his great love. He knew his Father from previous experience. He felt separated from his Father, but he knew that his Father was not separated from him because he knew him from previous experience. She continues saying, in submission, he commends himself to God. Amid the convulsions of nature, the amazed spectators hear the dying words of the Son of Man. It is finished. Jesus died a victorious man. He did not allow anything to discourage him. He was tempted to allow his feelings to dictate the way in which he felt. In fact, Ellen White says that the devil pressed upon his mind that if he went through with this, human beings would not be saved because God's justice would not make it possible, and that he would lose himself forever. And yet Jesus did not depend upon his feelings and his thoughts and emotions. He depended on the promises of his Father, because he knew his Father from personal experience. And so Jesus rested in the tomb. Very early, the first day of the week, two angels descended from heaven. One removed the stone, the other stood before the tomb, and with a loud voice said, "O thou Son of God, thy Father calls thee." Do you notice the connection? Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. The angel comes down and says, "Thy Father calls thee." Ellen White describes it. Then the angel from heaven, with a loud voice that caused the earth to quake, cried out, "Thou Son of God, thy Father calls thee, come forth." And Jesus came forth. His Father fulfilled his promise. Now there's this question: who resurrected Jesus? Was it the Father? Was it the angel? Or was it Jesus himself? Allow me to read you a statement from Ellen White, and then I'm going to read a passage from John chapter 10. Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 5, page 1114. Ellen White had this to say about Jesus: "He who died for the sins of the world was to remain in the tomb the allotted time. He was in that stony prison house as a prisoner of divine justice. He was responsible to the judge of the universe. He was bearing the sins of the world, and his Father only could release him. He was a prisoner of divine justice. Only his Father could release him. That's why Jesus said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Make sure you call me out as you've promised." Now, I know there's a passage that seems to indicate that Christ resurrected himself, but let's read it carefully. John chapter 10, verses 17 and 18. John chapter 10, verses 17 and 18. Here Jesus is speaking. He says, "Therefore my Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it up again." See? Jesus took it up. But let's continue reading. "No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power." The word power is better translated authority. It's the Greek word exousia. It's not dunamis. "I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again." Why? Let's finish the verse. "This command I have received from my Father." There's the biblical basis for the comment by Ellen White, that he was a prisoner of divine justice, and he relied on the promises of the Father that he had learned to love, that he knew by personal experience, and his Father resurrected him. What does all of this have to say to us? Listen, folks. We're in this nice place. I'm in a real nice room. I enjoy my cell phone, my iPhone, the newest one. All of the gadgets and all of the advantages and all the conveniences. But you know what? All of this is very soon going to come crashing down. And we are going to go through the same experience as Jesus. Listen to this remarkable statement. Found in the Review and Herald, April 14, 1896. We are going to go over the same ground as Jesus. There Ellen White explains, "The forces of darkness will unite with human agents who have given themselves into the control of Satan. And the same scenes that were exhibited at the trial, rejection, and crucifixion of Christ will be revived. Did you catch that? She says the same scenes that were exhibited at the trial, rejection, and crucifixion of Christ will be revived. Through yielding to satanic influences, men will be transformed into fiends. The word fiend means an evil spirit or a demon or a very wicked or cruel person. And she continues saying, and those who were created in the image of God, who were formed to honor and glorify their Creator, will become the habitation of dragons, and Satan will see in an apostate race his masterpiece of evil, men who reflect his own image. If we're alive, we're going to go through the same experience. Jesus died with nothing, not even his clothes. Satan is going to try and convince God's people that their sins are too great to be forgiven. Have you ever read the chapter on the time of trouble? That they will never see God's reconciling face. Ellen White says that as God's people think about the past, their hopes begin to sink. But then, like Jesus, they will say, Father, we know you. We know you from personal experience. Even though we feel that you'll never accept us, that we'll never see your face, we trust in your promises. You see, God's people are going to lose everything. We'll follow in the footsteps of Jesus. We won't be able to trust our emotions, our feelings, human friendships, family ties, material possessions, or even a feeling of the presence of God. God's people will have no human support. It will appear that they don't even have the support of God. But they will overcome, not because of what they feel or what they think, but because they know God and they trust in His promises. Like Job, which is a typological book. It really is a book that describes this time of trouble that God's people will go through. Like Job, God's people will say, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in my flesh I will see God. In Great Controversy 6:21, Ellen White explains about God's people during this period, their affliction is great. The flames of the furnace seem about to consume them, but the refiner will bring them forth as gold tried in the fire. God's love for His children during the period of their severest trial is as strong and tender as in the days of their sunniest prosperity. But it is needful for them to be placed in the furnace of fire. Their earthliness must be consumed, that the image of Christ may be perfectly reflected.